It was an eye-opener because I had already left school, and after leaving school, we believe that our education is over, but of course it isn't. There is more education that needs to go on for yourself. I did a lot more academic education as well as learning from the streets and learning from life and from my family about all the nuances that I needed to know. And racism was something that didn't automatically seem as a problem when I was in my early teens until I got to the stage where I started looking for work, started venturing out, branching out on my own out into other areas. Winkerbank was an area that I frequented regularly, Shire Green, areas like that. Winkerbank, as I said, Brightside, these were all areas I got to learn to know during the 80s, going to school round there, Limsfield, Newham Road, Hind House, Firth Park, Brushes were all the names of the schools in that area, in those areas, and we moved around there. Concord Sports Centre. We hung about round the shops as young people do. So nothing that's going on today is a surprise to me. We see kids hanging outside shops now. We see kids on bikes, not going anywhere, just hanging about. We see kids sometimes riding about. It's what we did. We did exactly the same thing. There were groups of boys, there were groups of girls, all doing similar things. So I'm talking to all branches of the community, but I'm particularly talking about black males because I'm a male. I was a young man once, so I can talk on behalf of young black males from the 80s. I can't talk on behalf of young black males of 2000s because I'm a lot older, but I can talk about it. And I do notice what goes on because of the training that I had whilst growing up. As in the 80s, I wanted to be all that I could be. Let's put it that way. We all want to be as much as we want to be. I had a lot of ambitions and things I wanted to go into. The industries that were predominant in this area, Sheffield, was the coal mines and it was the steel works. There were other jobs, carpentry, building work, but the main ones are the ones that I mentioned. So I, of course, went into engineering straight out to school off the bat, using lathes, micrometers, and high precision methods of making steel components, some for aerodynamics, aerospace, some for motor industry, some for the tool industry. But this was what we did. We could make screws. To this day I can make a screw, I can make a cylinder, I can bore down a rod from whatever millimeter to its that it's supposed to be. This is what we had to learn. We had to learn how to do this, and it's something that you pick up and you learn and then you go on. You don't have to learn all of the parts of mechanics, but you can learn that. You can learn this at a young age, starting from leaving school. And even at school, at the school that I went to, they had a auto mechanics department, so some of the young men would be working on motor vehicles, but for some reason it was hard for all kids to get onto this particular project, and this was at school. And I found at that time that the ones who were picked were the ones who had some understanding of mechanics. Their parents were mechanics, because in that time you had a lot of people who would be tinkering on their cars. You'd be walking down most streets and you'd see somebody outside their house tinkering with a vehicle, because people knew about vehicles. They knew a lot about bicycles. You could often take your bike to a neighbour's house and the parents would know how to mend it because they'd rode a bike themselves. They'd know how to change a tyre. Some of us at that age didn't know how to change tyres. We were taught by older people, older parents. And as a black kid, I had friends who were white, and their parents were very accepting of me. I never felt that I shouldn't have been knocking about with them because of my colour. Their parents often gave me tea, made sure I got home on time. And if I was rude, they would tell my parents. They would just scold me or grab me up and throw me out by the ear because I was. And if I was rude, they would tell my parents. They would just scold me or grab me up and throw me out by the ear because I was never rude. I was always taught by my parents to have manners while being out on the street. So this got me into a lot of good places, a lot of good avenues, a lot of good friends who I know to this day. I went to their parents' house, they gave me tea, we knocked about for hours. No trouble, no hint of racism, even though some of them did admit to me that they had racist tendencies. And I'm going to repeat that. Some of my friends did admit to me that they were from an area where racism was accepted. It was almost expected. And when I would go into these areas, I would see this, I would feel this from some of the members of the communities that, I wasn't really welcome in that area. It wasn't often, and it wasn't something that I said deterred me from going into those areas, but I became aware of it. I became aware when I was in Winkerbank. I used to play football for the teams in that area, and I would go up there often on my own into areas. As I said, they were all white areas. There were no Asian shops. There were very few Asians at that time. Even at Page Hall, there was very few Asian shops. There were maybe one or two that was opening in the 80s. There wasn't a lot. It's not like how it is now. Even in Pittsmore, there were not that many Asian shops. There was Sadiq's, and that was about it. And there was also other shops in other areas that you could visit. Mearsbrook had their own community. Nether Edge had their own community. Netherthorpe had its own community. But I think that's where it stopped. When you got further out of Burngreave, you found that there was less and less access to businesses for black companies. Got onto the Wicker, there were a few black businesses. There were a lot of pubs. There was probably a pub every 20 yards on Wicker. And then there was also Blues and Soul. And we'll talk about Blues and Soul because that's connected to what I was doing at that time. I would go down to Blues and Soul on behalf of my parents to buy music, to pay for music, and to run errands for my father or my mother, because they all knew each other. All the communities knew each other. My parents would also often talk about people that they knew, and when I then grew up, I got to meet their sons, their daughters, and be friends with them. We went to school together. We were engaging in the same activities as each other, sports, social activities. At that time, there was the hub that was open. There was also Bow Centre that was in the middle of the city centre. There was also Spring Street, which was another place that I then started to go to. But the city centre wasn't always a place where black people felt safe. It was a place where attacks could happen on black people. So black people were often advised to walk in twos, in threes, not to walk on your own. My parents told me about their experiences that they had in the 50s with the Teddy Boys. And if this is something that people have omitted from history, then that's because they're not wanting to tell our history. They want to tell their history. So the Teddy Boys were the ones who were bullying people on the streets. My parents told me about this. This is not made up. This was not made up. You ask any West Indian parent about this, and their children will probably tell you what their parents told them. And that's why we all stuck together. We were told to stick together and to be a one, not to fight each other, which was great advice. So when we see modern times where people no longer take the advice of the elders, then we don't have to really wonder why we are in the state that we're in. We can say this about all communities. They don't listen to their elders anymore. So this has then become a problem. I don't think this is a major problem for the white communities, because they're always going to have somebody in power. There's going to be somebody there who looks like them, who they can accept as being a leader. In the black community, we don't have this. We seldom have people who we can look forward to and see them as leaders. There are people who are put in place, often used as puppets. You have a puppet master behind them, handling them. We see this in the P. Diddy incident, where P. Diddy is being accused of so many things. But the thing is that this has been going on for many years. What I thought, not just with P. Diddy, it was going on in Hollywood. Jackie Collins wrote books about it and was often vilified for being the person who exposed the secrets of Hollywood. That's what she was vilified for, not the fact that she was talking the truth or anything other than that. She was talking about things that were going on that they didn't want to be exposed. And we have people like Hugh Hefner, who is openly admitted to be a person who likes to take pictures of young women. We have Woody Allen, who openly married a young woman. This goes on in Hollywood. There's plenty of other incidents. We could talk about Elvis. We could talk about Walt Disney. But of course, it's going to upset some people. If we talk about incestuous marriages and incestuous behaviors in communities, this is going to upset some people. I don't understand why, because they talk about rape, that black and Asian community and Asian gangs persist in those activities. They talk about this, and this is often people who are not from the Asian community we're talking about. We'll then talk about the things that are done that we don't want to be part of. But because we don't want to be part of it, we are being seen as not being part of society. That's rubbish. That's rubbish, because there's many parts of society. There's parts of society that we don't often see. We don't want to go and visit, but that is still society. And we don't want to admit that we have poverty and that we have a lower class of people, but that is what's going on. So we have people who have already put their minds into where they're thinking in a class system. They think they are higher class, so they don't believe that they are the same as the people who are poor. And the people who fall into the poor categories are usually black people, Asians, people of ethnic groups. So of course they're going to be represented in the crime stats. Are white people mentioned in the crime stats? Of course they are. But for some reason it's overlooked by some parts of the media. It shouldn't be, because if we put it in proportion, there is going to be more white on white crime than there is more black on black crime. And this can be seen as race baiting, but it isn't. It's the facts. These are facts. We can say, well, there are the facts. Of course there are other facts. But this is what I'm talking about when we talk about finding the truth. We can elicit it, or we can delve into it, or we can accept the cold, hard truth. And the cold, hard truth is that society does not really like black people. Society especially does not tolerate black males. Black males who speak out, they don't tolerate it. Black males with criminal records, they don't speak about it. Because we have other people who have got other tainted history who will go and speak about other people's tainted history, but not mention their own tainted history. I have a tainted history. I openly admit to have been incarcerated at times of my life. Am I going to talk about it? No, I don't think it's necessary. I've already told you I've been incarcerated. You know what that means? So what is there else to admit? I've come out and I've rehabilitated. That is what we have. We have a Rehabilitation Act that deems that anybody who goes to jail or goes into any criminal activities and then moves away from it should be forgiven. Like you should be forgiven, I should be forgiven, and I believe in this. Some people don't. They only believe in it to a certain level, and this is where I talk about the race hate comes into it. Because if you only tolerate it for your own group but don't tolerate it for other people, you are a bit of a racist, mate. And maitresses. You don't want to admit it, but that's what goes on. I think we all have some preference for our own culture and for our own ethnic groups. Of course we're going to have that, because that's what we're used to, but we should not use that in order to hold somebody else down, especially if you're in power. And let's look at people who are in power. People who are in power do abuse their privileged position. Am I in any power position? I think sometimes I'm seen as in a powerful position. And I can prove this by the fact that a lot of people don't support things, they don't support certain things. When they see certain people doing things, they comment that that person's, a bit crazy, that person's not right, they shouldn't be saying that, they shouldn't be doing that, they shouldn't be acting that way. That's fine, we have opinions. But soon as that person shows any form of success, this is when these people jump on the bandwagon. You probably do this yourself. I don't do this. I'm not a bandwagonist. If you understand what a bandwagon is, it's one of the lowest forms of friendship. It's somebody who's not really there for you. They're there to jump on the bandwagon. The bandwagon could be anything. Could be a project that you're doing. Could be my music. A lot of people like my music, like what I play. But they know that I don't support other things, so they play both sides. That's fine. You can be a righteous person and still, often look in and look over to what's happening on the other side. But if you're playing both sides, one against the other, then no, that's not where I'm at, and I will expose you for that. Even in the simplest way of not really fully being into what you're about, because I know that you're playing both sides. You're here to get on it when it's hot. When I'm not hot, they often go and find somebody else who's hotter. That's fine as well, because that is the name of the industry that we're in. We're in an industry that really only appeals to young people and appeals to those who have high egos and low thresholds of not intelligence, but of sort of attention span. Doesn't mean to you're less intelligent than other people if you can't listen to this whole vlog. That's why I do it in 15-minute segments. If you want to watch the whole of it, go onto YouTube and you can see the full explanation of what I'm saying. That's why I edit it down, so it gives you a little bit of snippet of the conversation and what I'm talking about, but without the fullness, you're never really gonna see what's going on. But anyway, it's always going to be about love and light. And in this particular program, I'm going to introduce some of the new segments. I'm going to be talking about some of the artists. I've got an artist who's chomping at the bits, wanted to come onto the show. I'm wanting to have this person on the show and these other people. I'm trying to organize the show to make it a little bit more pizzazz and a little bit more razzmatazz, as well as being controversial, because I know that the controversy works as well. But I know that the panache and the pizzazz is what people want. They want to come to some of the events. So I've got events lined up. Some you may well be invited to, some you unfortunately cannot be invited to these events. But yeah, Magic Matam, we're going to introduce you to the world, what you're about. He's an African artist, very talented, produces, sings himself, and he's got a story to tell, and he's going to do it through his music. So I'm going to let him tell his story.
Restez chez vous avec votre modernisation et laissez l'Afrique à l'état naturel. L'Afrique aux Africains. L'Afrique est devenue une histoire de manger, c'est chacun qui vient puiser, il s'en va.
Ça ne va pas.
En Côte d'Ivoire, au Mali,
ça ne va pas.
La Côte d'Ivoire béto. L'Afrique sans Africain, c'est votre devoir, votre challenge.
Ça ne va pas.
Au Sénégal, à Cabrief, au Bénin,
ça ne va pas.
Et au Togo. Laissez l'Afrique aux Africains, à l'état brut. Au Nigeria,
ça ne va pas.
Et au Congo, en Guinée,
ça ne va
même
pas.
chez Sékou Touré. Ils sont dédiés, ils sont dédiés, ils sont dédiés. Ils sont dédiés, ils sont dédiés, ils sont dédiés. Moulé mamweba na bongo, Boudouté na bongo. Moulé mamweba na doutoué, Boudouté na douméa. Ouais, Ibola de Baba Douti. Mémé c'est nos bisons ça. Alléluia. Les voleurs d'or. Au Ghana,
Ça ne va pas,
au Libéria, en Éthiopie
ça ne va pas,
et au Rwanda. Les voleurs du diamant et du pétrole en Afrique. Les voleurs du bois, du mercure. Au Zimbabwe,
ça ne va pas,
en Tanzanie, en Guinée
ça ne va pas,
et au Centrafrique. L'Afrique sans Africains, c'est votre devoir, votre mission, votre challenge. Les maladies, c'est vous. La prostitution, c'est vous. La pédophilie, c'est vous. Corona, c'est vous. Rendez aux Africains ce que vous leur avez
ça
volé.
ne va pas,
Au début, l'Afrique était unie et solidaire.
ça ne
Il
va
n'y
pas,
avait pas de guerre, il n'y avait pas de tuerie partout.
ça ne va pas,
Aujourd'hui, c'est partout en Afrique. La déstabilisation
ça ne
africaine.
va pas,
C'est ça que vous voulez. Et vous nous parlez de modernisation. Alors restez chez vous. Sinon, on va vous chicoter. Gaddafi, ton peuple a besoin de toi. Christian est bien chicote. On va
Ça ne
vous
va pas.
chicoter. Le parrain, on va
Ça ne
vous
va pas.
chicoter. On va
Ça ne
vous
va pas.
chicoter. On va
ça ne
vous
va pas.